What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Pro V Pro, coming off a very exciting Masters, another dominant performance from Scottie Scheffler. We'll talk about Scottie, we'll talk about the Masters, we'll talk about the RBC Heritage, where we're at in the one and done, everything you could possibly want. Justin, how are you? How was Masters week for you?
Can we just talk about how incredible Scottie Scheffler is? I think that's what we're coming. I think that's the biggest takeaway is like, it's one thing to be a 4-1 favorite. It's another thing to win as a 4-1 favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Man,
not only that, but he's showing that he can win in any way he needs to. Like he was one of the best ball strikers this week, but he didn't win because of his ball striking. He won because of his short game. It was a very Matsuyama-esque type of Masters victory this week.
And his bounce back ability after, I think on Saturday, I think everybody was like, whoa, he's going to get beat here. You know, I think he made a couple of bogeys and a double there in the middle of the round. And I think everybody was kind of like, oh, you know, maybe he is human. And then he just comes back and makes a long one for eagle. Like it's no big deal. And yeah, man, it's just an incredible effort for several weeks in a row. Like, I think that we're going to look back at this in 10 years and maybe call it the most dominant 4 or 5 tournament stretch we've ever seen.
It really has been. And again, he's doing it by being the best in the world off the tee, the best in the world with his irons, and the best in the world around the greens. Like that combination, we haven't seen that kind of dominance since Tiger.
Yeah, and I think that we're also kind of showing – I think if you could go back and watch some of our early shows together, we've always talked about the putting variance and how all of that is just kind of – I don't want to call it indifferent because it obviously matters, but, you know, it's not going to cause people to win and lose over a long period of time. They have to do it the other ways. And I think this has kind of proven that point. We were kind of way ahead of the game when it came to the lack of – necessarily taking great putters only, right? As far as backing great putters. This guy has done it as – I think he's better than what he's given credit for, but we just see so many of his short misses that, you know, when you're in contention every week, you're going to be on TV more.
Yeah. I'll say a couple things there. Number one is I still think that one of the most impressive things about Scottie over the last few years has been the fact that most golfers, what we see is when they go through a stretch where they're hitting the ball extremely well, they're playing great tee to green, and then they just can't finish it on the greens and they're struggling to make putts. And week in, week out, the putter's the thing that's holding them back. The very natural progression from that is to spend all their time putting. And next thing you know, all those frustrations on the green are seeping into the long game, and now you're struggling with the long game. We saw it with Jordan Spieth for a number of years. We saw it with Justin Thomas a lot of last season. We're seeing it a little bit again this year. At no point has that happened with Scottie. He's somehow been able to stay confident and poised and patient with the putter, and the result of that is it's not a surprise at all to me when he makes a mistake like his bogey on 7 Sunday at the Masters, and it just doesn't faze him at all. Because if he had the mental fortitude to deal with that putter for almost an entire year and just never allow that to affect his long game or even his short game, like that just tells me what a different plane he's operating on, even just from a mental standpoint.
Yeah, it's truly incredible. And I don't know if you saw this, but I saw somebody's hanging 80-1 on winning the Grand Slam this year.
That's crazy.
I mean, he's going to be a favorite in every golf tournament, right? He's going to be a favorite in every golf tournament. So
definitely.
So like, and you know the other thing that I think is funny, so if you back Scottie Scheffler 4-1 this week, right, for whatever amount. Everybody's going to give you grief. Oh, you backed the favorite and won. Way to go, way to go. But if you backed NC State plus 300 to win a basketball game, you look like a genius.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like but one is so much sharper than the other in the general betting mind. I just think it shows how different golf is and the mentality with golf. I mean, is Scotty Scheffler as likely to win the Masters as NC State was to beat North Carolina? Like, it's probably about the same. Like, you got an extra 100 to 1. So I just think it's funny that we fall into that trap. I know I fall into that trap all the time, as far as like, I'll pass on a guy that I think is really, really good and is got a real chance to win at 18 to 1, because I just know how hard golf is and the variance in golf. And I think that we're realizing now that maybe that variance doesn't include Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah, I would number one, point to the fact that he's now actually gained strokes putting in 4 straight events. So all that talk about like, oh man, can you imagine if he actually started putting well? Yeah, he would win 3 out of 4 weeks, with the other week being a second place finish. So we're seeing that. The other thing I'd say is, it's not that he hasn't been variant. It's just that he's so far above everybody else. Like last 4 weeks, +5, +4.8, +2.66, and then +5.3 strokes gained per round. So again, it's not like we're not seeing variance in his play. It's just that his play is so much above everybody else that he just varies from like first place to second place, maybe a third or a sixth in there somewhere. But he's just been unbelievable. And the 80 to 1 number is interesting. I think this week we have him at 28%. I just very quickly threw in 25% just to see what that would be like. 1.5% would be his chances of finishing this Grand Slam if you give him a 25% chance of winning each of the next 3 majors. So it's very much not out of the question that 80 to 1 is even a fair number, or a number that would actually hold some kind of value. Pretty crazy to think.
Yeah, I mean, Tiger Woods, he held them all at one time, but he never did it all in the same season. Kind of moving into the Scotty talk, there was a point there, I know on Saturday and Sunday at least, where I felt like I had seen enough Scotty Scheffler shots. Did you ever get to the point watching the broadcast of like, hey, I want to see some of these guys hitting hitting more shots or more. I mean, I think you made the point of more drives or whatever. Yeah. I know I was really disappointed of not getting to see more high leverage shots on Saturday and Sunday of a guy that is trying to get in contention. I want to see his second shot into 13 when he's going for the green. I don't want to see a replay when he hits it in the water or even when he hits it close. I want to be able to see those high leverage shots way more often than what they showed. I think we did get more shots maybe than pre-LIV, I guess is the best way to put it, where they are trying to change their broadcast. Mm-hmm. I'm still pretty displeased with the way that they broadcast the tournament, though.
I was really disappointed this week. I had a very distinct memory of the Masters being like the Players in the sense that the broadcast is just far better than other events. It was far better at the Players. I didn't think it was far better this week. To your point, I think the number one criticism, and this isn't something that just we are saying, like this is a very, very common thing said around the industry, is that they just don't show enough golf shots. I thought there were way too many instances like when Morikawa was trying to drop on 11 after hitting it into the water. You don't need to stay on Morikawa for 3 full minutes as he figures out exactly what place he's going to drop. You can go show other shots. We all know that Morikawa is going to drop and hit onto the green. Just come back to him when he's actually ready to hit. We don't need to just watch them standing around doing nothing while they wait for a rules official to come. We get it. He's going to drop. Go show us other golf shots. Really important shots are being hit around the course. We're going to come back to that point in a little bit, but you mentioned something that I said to you the other day that I do think is a unique take from us that we haven't really heard around the industry, and that is if NBC or ESPN or the PGA Tour, whomever, came to me and said, what's one thing that you would like changed about the broadcast? I think the main thing that I would say, that I don't think many would say, is I want to see more tee shots, particularly on a golf course like Augusta where the tee shot can be so crucial. Like think of number 7. 7 was this super scoreable pin on Sunday where if you're in the fairway, you're maybe 120 yards out. The entire green slopes to that pin. So if you're in the fairway, it's a big time birdie opportunity. We saw Tommy Fleetwood hit it to a couple feet, make birdie. And yet, if you don't drive it well, like Scotty, like Homa, if you put it in the trees, now your most likely outcome is bogey. So that tee shot is so crucial. And yet we didn't see like hardly any tee shots. We maybe saw Scotties, we maybe saw Homas. We certainly didn't see many more than that. And time again, they would just cut to the player. Here's so-and-so after a drive down the middle, or here's so-and-so after a drive into the trees. Show me that drive. That drive is so much more important than the second shot. Maybe other people don't feel that way, but like when I even remember like at the Players, the 18th hole, there's water left. There are those big trees right. That 18th tee shot is incredibly important. We've seen Cameron Young hit it in the water twice 2 years ago to miss the cut. Like tournaments are won and lost on that hole. And time again, it was here's Sahith Thagala after a 340-yard drive down the middle that hugged the water's edge. But we're not going to show you that. We're just showing you this second shot. Show us the damn tee shots. They matter so much. And it's like the broadcast just believe that the only thing that matters in golf are putts and iron shots.
Yeah, I think they show probably too much putting and not enough tee shots. And I'm not sure that I have the same take on the drive, like necessarily every tee shot. Like I don't need, but the ones like you're talking about that are high leverage. Hey, we're talking about a 2-shot swing from making a birdie to a bogey tee shots. That's the ones that, 13, 15, 7. Let's show all of those. Let's show more shots. I mean, I'm not used to seeing that few tee shots on par 3s.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we saw almost none. Like 16.
Yeah, there were even times on 16 where they would say, here's so-and-so after his tee shot went to 15 feet or something like that. It's like, that where he is, that must have taken the slope. It might have scared the hole. Like, you should be showing us that shot. That's what we want.
Right. I mean, like, it was really crazy. They just, I honestly just think that whoever's running the show, I bet they can't break 200. They have no clue about golf. They have no clue about high leverage shots. They've never been taught. They're just doing what they were told. I mean, hell, we watched 7 minutes of Scotty Scheffler warm up when they went on air. Like, what are we doing?
And not only that, but that's been a complaint of mine all year, from like PGA Tour Live to the alternate broadcasts on Masters.com and ESPN Plus this week. Like, you could have been watching Amen Corner. I remember they didn't show a single shot of Lucas Glover's on 13th on the Amen Corner broadcast because they're showing exactly what's on the main broadcast. Like, if someone's there watching Amen Corner, you have to have the common sense to realize they're watching that in addition to the actual broadcast. You don't need to show the guys that you're showing nonstop on the broadcast. Just show the other guys in the hole. That's why we're tuning in to that alternate broadcast. But I think your point that like the producers maybe don't know golf as well, I think is a good one. But I also expect that if we were having this conversation with them, their retort to our conversation about the tee shots is that, you know what, you're probably right, but the average viewer doesn't necessarily realize that. They don't realize how important the tee shot is, whereas they very much realize like a 10-foot putt either goes in or it doesn't, and that's worth a full stroke. They don't realize that, a drive on 13 around the corner in the fairway sets you up for an eagle opportunity or potentially an easy birdie, whereas if you're in the trees, now you got to pitch out, you've got no chance at eagle, all that. So I think that would be their retort, which is probably a fair one.
See, I disagree. I don't think it's a fair retort. How many people tune in to watch the stupid long drive contest? Like, the general public loves seeing a 350-yard drive.
Yeah.
Like they like it more than we do. Like, I don't care about a 350-yard drive on a normal golf course where it's wide open and it's not a high leverage shot. But we have so many high leverage tee shots here. Why would you not show them?
Yeah, that's a great point too. But I'd also say, like, to the original point, when you, for example, show Colin Morikawa for 3 minutes before he makes his drop on 11, the message that you're sending, the story that you're telling is that the only guys who matter on the golf course right now are Colin Morikawa and Scotty Scheffler, maybe Max Homa as well. So if you can't watch those guys, you might as well not care about who else is on the golf course. At that time, they could have been selling the story that there are 8 to 10 guys who have a very realistic chance of winning. The lead was 6, maybe 7 at the time. There were probably 10 to 11 guys within 4 or 5 of the lead. If someone went on, the kind of tear that Åberg went on Friday, they'd be right there. especially if Scotty didn't end up separating from the field. If he stayed at 7 or 8 the rest of the way, like it was anyone's ball game at that point. And instead of selling that, like in those moments, the broadcast could have been absolutely spectacular, where it's just one high leverage shot after another. They could have been cutting to guys at 15 who maybe they were 5-6 back, but man, you eagle 15, then you birdie 16. Scotty makes a bogey, and now it's like, okay, this guy could birdie the last hole to have the clubhouse lead and match the best score on the golf course, and they just have to hope someone backs up. It was just a missed opportunity after missed opportunity, I thought, where the broadcast made the tournament seem a lot less interesting than it actually was in the moment.
Yeah, and everybody was making bogey on 17 and 18. Show me why. Like, it's not because of their second shot or their putting. It's because of their tee shots. Like, I want to know where they were hitting it. Like, what were they doing? Like, how? I mean, I know you noticed this. They showed Cam Smith hit a really good third in there and then missed a short one for par on Saturday. But how did he get there? Like, he had to hit a bad drive and have to chip out, or like, what was going on with all these guys? I have no idea. Unless you and Masters is a little bit different, where you have to go back and watch it. I almost prefer the shot tracker concept of seeing it and then being able to go back and watch it. But yeah, like I have no idea why 17, 18 played so hard.
Which is honestly something I think they usually do a pretty good job of, like particularly if there is somebody making a run an hour before the leaders are getting to the end, where they're showing every shot from that guy. So by the time the leaders come through, you have a sense of how those holes are playing. Like you said, you understand why a hole is playing really difficult, or why it's playing really easy, or what shot on that hole is the high leverage shot. We didn't get any of that this week, despite the fact that like we did have Tyrrell Hatton going kind of nuts for a while, and he slowed down the stretch, but he would have been a great guy to show all of Hatton's shots, show why even this guy who's a blazing 5 under going into those last 3 holes is making the mistakes and bogeys down the stretch we didn't get to see. And to that point as well, like they also showed way too many tap-ins for par or bogey on 18 for guys who were 8 over for no reason. It's like, why? Just because he won or was in contention the last few years, you think we want to see this while you're not showing us Cam Smith's approach on 8 or something like that? Come on, guys. Yeah, it's not that hard to figure out. And
it just the narrative of the LIV hate has got to go away. Like they're gonna coexist. The digs on, oh well, now we have all PGA Tour players in the top 5 and all of this like stuff that they're told to say, right? It's all about and we're not gonna show anybody. I think they didn't show Hatton because he's a LIV guy. They didn't show much Cam Smith because he's a LIV guy. They literally, they didn't do it because of that factor, and that's asinine. It's obviously they're gonna coexist.
Yeah. So I had one additional thought there. If the only motive for not showing those guys is because you want to be bitter about LIV and not give those guys spotlight, I think it's a terrible decision. If on the other hand, it's in response to LIV saying our guys are all going to wear their like LIV team logos and all that and use it as a big giant walking advertisement for LIV, then it's like, okay, how about you guys meet somewhere in the middle and, you say we're going to broadcast these guys, but let them just wear regular clothes and not LIV propaganda and team logos, things of that nature.
Yeah, and there might be some of that's in contracts that we don't know about of like, hey, this is kind of part of the deal. We're going to pay you all this money to come over here. I mean, Patrick Reed played really good too. Did we see any shots? I can't remember. Maybe one. Patrick, that bunker shot that he made. I don't really remember any other shots of.
I will say though about Patrick Reed, and this is honestly a little bit true of Cam Smith. I know this because I used him and I watched him miss a bunch of like 11-foot birdie putts. Neither of them were ever making a run. And especially on Sunday, they both put up good scores, not because they were hitting good shots, making birdies and making a run, but because hole after hole, they managed to make par on a hole that they had no business making par on. So it's like, if you're a broadcaster, all right, which shot of theirs am I actually going to show? Because it was just bad. How the hell did he make par over and over again?
And Cam Smith, I saw Cam Smith the last day, 1 eagle, 1 bogey is incredible around there. And then also he only made 7 birdies for the whole week.
Yeah, I had Jake Knapp at, what was it? I think he finished 12 over, and Knapp wasn't that far behind Cam Smith in DraftKings points. Like it was nuts. I think Lucas Glover, who finished either I think Glover finished 3 over, Cam Smith 2 under, and Glover was like 1.5 DraftKings points behind Cam Smith. It was nuts.
Yeah, and I mean, he definitely struggled with the putter there at times. He had plenty of chances on Saturday to make that run that you're talking about, right? Like he had a chance to make some birdies there and missed like 3 or 4 and 5 holes inside 15 feet.
He could have shot 6 under on Saturday without like a spectacular Cam Smith putting day, just a good putting day. That was a tough watch because, man, he really could have been right there. And then you put Cam Smith in contention, and that's a little bit more firepower to put some pressure on Scotty, which we saw like at the Open last year.
Yeah, and I think we now know Åberg's for real, right? He's going to be around for a long time, I believe. Yeah. I mean, I think we're going to see a lot of that battle at the top in the coming years. Really impressive debut. Just, I mean, I think he's just that good too. Does he become Scotty Scheffler? I mean, it took a while for Scotty Scheffler to become Scotty Scheffler. If anybody has that trajectory, if not even a little bit higher at the same age, I think you have to look at him.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, his ball striking has been unbelievable. He's already one of, if not the best drivers in the world. Again, I think Scotty's clearly above him there, but Scotty, Rory, Bryson, I'm not really sure you can put anybody else above him at this point. Maybe Cam Young, but even Cam Young has like taken a step back driving this year relative to last. His iron play has also been phenomenal. I think he's certainly ahead of Scotty from a putting standpoint right now. Where he falls well short of Scotty is with his short game. But if he can turn that somewhat weakness into a strength the way some others have on tour, like that, there's not really a ceiling that you can cap Åberg at right now.
Yeah, and I, like I said, he's probably the one that I'm most excited to see what he does in the future because, if you took Scotty's first year out of school and now his first year out of school, I would probably argue that Scotty would be behind, right, in your very first year. So it's just a take that going forward, I think we'll see those guys battle it out for a lot of majors going forward, as long as they both stay healthy and they both continue to work hard.
Speaking of Åberg, he's one of the very few guys that we still have available in the one and done. We're up to 201st now. I think we played last week really, really cleverly with the Cam Smith pick. We were right. A lot of people went with the LIV player strategy, just saying, hey, there are only 4 events we can use these guys. There's some really, really good players. Koepka was really popular. Rahm was really popular. Cam Smith was only 4%, and he was the highest finishing LIV player. So I think we kind of nailed that one. Now, it was only a tie for 6th, so it's not like we got a ton out of it. So we're going to have to continue to nail the picks moving forward, but I think we've played this season really well to this point. I'm excited to see how we can close it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think this week is a really, really interesting week as far as one and done goes because we're coming off the Masters into another elevated event, which, as you know, they change these elevated event formats about every single time you play it. I believe 90% sure this is a no-cut event.
Correct.
But I think that this is a week where the obvious chalk is going to go one way, and we've kind of talked about, do we just lean into the chalk when we get there, or do we find another area of maybe a chance to pounce and go a little bit different direction?
I will say this is one of the weeks where the industry's kind of thoughts on course fit very much are accurate. We have a lot of weeks where people will talk about, oh, this is a bomber's paradise. And then we look at our course fit model. It's like driving accuracy actually has a higher signal than distance. Or people say it's a second shot golf course and it's all about approach play. But no, it's all about driving and setting yourself up for those high leverage iron shots. And then around the green has a big signal, something like that. Here, the prevailing narrative is that distance doesn't matter as much and driving accuracy matters a ton. That is true. We have a slight decrease on approach play and then an increase on both around the green and putting. So when you think about like the guys who historically have had the best course histories of this golf course. Luke Donald comes to mind. Yeah, it makes sense, right? It's accuracy off the tee, short game, putting, and then there's still plenty of signal for approach play. I'd also say there's more signal than I think most people do give to distance. It's only at -9%, so 9% less predictive than usual. That still means distance is pretty darn predictive here. So maybe there's some room there to find some edges. But man, when I look through the initial odds board and the outrights, when I look through the initial ownership on the DFS side of things, I'm not seeing a ton of inefficiencies. I think the most glaring one to me is Sahith Theegala is underpriced in the outright market. Got him at 35-1. We give him a 4.3% chance of winning and an 18.4% chance of finishing in the top 5. So if you can get that 35-1 with the each way, like I was able to do on Bet365, very much recommend that bet. And on the DFS side of things, currently we've got him projecting around 10 to 15%. To me, that would make him one of the best plays of the slate at just $8,900. What do you think of Theegala all around?
Well, I think Theegala is continuing to show that he's got the ability to be the best player in the world, or, well, besides Scheffler. But he's got to rein it in and figure it out, right? I still think he's still learning every time he goes out. He's got to gain some confidence and believe he's as good as he is. I don't know if you agree with that, but just the way he carries himself, I think he obviously knows he's good, but he doesn't walk around maybe the same way some of the other guys do. I think
he doesn't ever look calm when he's playing really well. He looks confident to me at times, but he doesn't look calm. He doesn't look like anything can be thrown his way and he'll just take it in stride. He looks like if he makes a mistake, he might compound that mistake and start losing confidence.
I agree. I just don't think he knows how to carry himself yet, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he's just comfortable enough to know like how to carry what he's doing and how he's doing it and whatever way that falls, right? And I think that goes both sides. Golf is a lot about finding a way to be comfortable while uncomfortable, if that makes sense. That goes at all levels, right? And that goes for high scores, low scores, hard courses, easy courses. How comfortable can you make yourself? So I think he'll get there, and I think that he's shown that he deserves to be talked about pretty much at any type of golf course.
I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that the reason why he did well at the Masters was because of how he drove the ball. He drove it really well once again. We've talked about it all season. Very, very few players make the type of jump in a skill that Theegala has made this season, going from one of the least accurate drivers on tour to now being in probably like the top quartile of accuracy off the tee. Just a huge, huge, huge improvement, which allows him to take advantage of the rest of his game, which is quite good. It was actually his short game that kind of failed him this week, lost 0.6 per round. There was nothing special about his iron play, putted pretty well again, not as well as he's sometimes capable of putting. But man, off the tee was really good again. So I think that's why he's being undervalued this week at the Heritage, because people are still they haven't come around to the fact that accuracy is now a strength of his. And so he actually is a much, much, much better fit for Hilton Head or for this golf course than most people realize for Harbour Town.
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of are in agreement of his talent. And so it's just, if he can continue to drive it good, he's going to have a chance every week because he has a chance to hit the high leverage shots really well. And I think that's another thing about this golf course is that you still have a lot of, yes, you have to hit it straight, but I think it is to the dogleg right par 5. You still have to hit a really good tee shot. I mean, I know it's short, but you have to hit a good tee shot. And it's a lot easier for a guy like him that's hitting a 4, 5, 6 iron into it to a small green than these guys that, yes, even a guy like me, I'm going to reach, but I might be hitting hybrid or a little bit longer club into. It's just going to be a more difficult shot. I think the same thing. I know I don't think Zalatoris is quite as good around the green, but a guy like Zalatoris really sticks out this week to me as well because of just the way it comes down to the same exact concept that we talked about that I talked about a couple of weeks ago with Batia at San Antonio. Like, he has the ability to ball strike his way around this place.
Another guy that I think is a really, really good fit, Siwoo Kim, our boy. We haven't played a lot of him this year. Accuracy off the tee. He is the second most accurate player in this entire field by our strokes gained driving accuracy metric, only behind Scotty Scheffler. 0.69 for Scotty per round, 0.60 for Siwoo Kim. Next best is Morikawa at 0.43. So Siwoo's accuracy off the tee has been flat out phenomenal. Also one of the better short games in the world. This could be his week. The only thing, as usual, is the putter. Have you seen anything from Siwoo in the last couple of weeks that makes you think, you know what, maybe he is turning a corner with the putter? He gained at the Players 1.3 per round, gained at Augusta as well, 0.24 per round, lost about half a stroke at the Houston Open. What's your take on Siwoo?
So he gained 0.24 at Augusta after maybe the worst three putt he's ever had on 18 to what we thought was going to miss the cut by one. So if we don't, I'm going to imagine Fitzpatrick is your chalk this week and one and done. If we're going to not go with chalk, Siwoo was my next pick. So that's kind of where I stand as far as that goes. Obviously, I really like him here. It's the best overall combination if you wanted to play a guy like Siwoo in an elevated event. You know, whereas there might be other courses to play him at, but if you wanted to take advantage of playing him in an elevated event, I think this would be the week. And the other thing, the other thing that makes me like to play a guy like him, like let's say that the chalk eats up the top of the leaderboard this week, right? Scheffler, and then Xander, Rory, they finished top three. If let's say that Siwoo doesn't play good for 2 or 3 days, he's shown that he might go shoot 5, 6, 7, 8 under on Sunday and backdoor a top 10 and still get a lot of value out of him in the one and done market. I think the biggest deal would just be fading the Fitzpatrick play this week.
Yeah, I agree. I also think, by the way, that there's still a chance that Scotty's going to withdraw before the start. And not even talking about the fact that, like, oh, his wife could go into labor and he's just going to leave. Of course, that's there. I'm more talking about the fact that he just won the Masters. He's been on this historic run. Maybe he just wants to, take it easy, stay with his wife for a few days, for a week before the baby comes, and just have some quiet time for a little bit. I don't know. It just, I wouldn't have been surprised to see it coming into the week. I am a little bit surprised, or I should say, I do feel like if he were going to do that, he probably would have already made that decision. But point being here, Scotty being in the field makes, I think, a big difference, because as long as he's in the field, there's nobody else that has a huge win equity. Xander is second in our win odds at 7.5%, Åberg 6.5%, Rory 5.9%. So going from that to, Siwoo at 1.7%, I don't feel like we're giving up a ton. Whereas if Scotty suddenly dropped and now Siwoo went from 1.7 to like 2.0, but Åberg went from 6.5 to 9.0 or something like that, then I think it would be a little bit tougher to go with that contrarian with Siwoo. But for the time being, I really like that call. I think he's probably my number one choice at the moment as well.
So my problem with Åberg is he just contended in the biggest golf tournament of his life. And the feeling of that side of it, like, I think that the general industry plays are going to be Fitzpatrick, Morikawa, and Åberg, or Morikawa and Åberg because of their performance last week, and then Fitzpatrick because of how his course fit here obviously is really good.
Yeah, I think I agree. I also throw Fleetwood in there and Schauffele in there,
and you could probably even include Lowry, maybe not as high owned, but I think a lot of people just feel like he plays really good here. I just don't feel like any of them do more for me than Siwoo does this week, strictly because of the different factors. Morikawa and Åberg. Åberg is the most talented. He's going to gain ownership just because of the way he played. I'm going to look at him to kind of regress this week because of the mental just being tired mentally, right? He's just the mental hangover from being in contention. mean, he's made more money last week than he could ever imagine making, I'm guessing.
I'll give you another really contrarian name. Byung-hun An, I think, is somebody, number one, projects quite well. So we mentioned 1.7 win percent for Siwoo. We've got On at 1.4%, 9.4% chance of a top 5. So projects quite well. I'm not sure there's a player in this field who the public perception of his course fit is going to be most different than our perception of his course fit because of our proprietary strokes gain driving accuracy metric. Most people see the low percentage of fairways that he hits and just assumes he's not accurate off the tee, not realizing he's one of the absolute longest hitters on tour. So he's at a disadvantage when it comes to hitting fairways. He can always dial that back. I think that's one reason why distance is predictive here, is because if you get to a hole where you absolutely have to hit the fairway, guess what? A lot of guys are going to try to do that with 3-wood. Ben On can do that with 3-iron and hit it to the exact same place a lot of the time. And he's actually pretty accurate off the tee, gains 0.16 strokes per round with his driving accuracy alone. And then, of course, we know the guy has one of the better short games in the world. So I think he's a very, very underrated course fit here. Coming off a pretty good week at Augusta, had a few bad holes, but man, tee to green, there weren't many that were better at Augusta than Benny.
I agree completely, and I think that you will see him hit a lot more 3-irons and that kind of stuff because he has the ability. I just think if we're going to go contrarian and try to win this thing, that we've got to go with somebody that's going to play uber aggressive, and I think Siwoo Kim fits that bill of like, hey, I'm just going to send it.
Yeah, that's fair. I'd also say I'm a little bit more interested in Benny just from a DFS perspective. Like I think this might be like the ultimate FTN special, just core of our favorites on DraftKings this week. Thigala, Siwoo, Benny On. Doesn't get better than that. Maybe you even throw Taylor Moore, Keegan Bradley in there, something like that, just to really close the deal. But man, that trio of Thigala, Siwoo, Ben On just looks phenomenal.
And I love Taylor Moore this week for his price. Mm-hmm. And while we're talking about it, like we always talk about trying to be ahead, I think there's a guy at the very bottom of the board in DFS this week that really, really allows a lot of leverage for to kind of play the rest of the lineup as you please, and that's Chandler Phillips.
I was guessing that was the name you were going to say.
He drives it very straight. I don't know what I don't know if the numbers add up to that. I have no clue. I haven't looked at his driving accuracy numbers. I just know from personal experience that he hits it very, very straight. And man, if there could be a golf course built for him, this might be it. And I know the other thing is you get a guy that wants to be there, right? He needs to go play good.
Yeah.
It's not a week off and a guaranteed paycheck for him. He needs to go make some money, and I know he is appreciative to be there. So if you want to free up some money at the bottom to take a low-owned guy that I think could very easily finish in the top 10 or 15, I think he's the answer.
Yeah, I like the call. I really like the thought process at the end there that, this is, I think, a harder week than most to handicap because it's one of the very few times you get to an elevated event and you have to question how prepared is this guy? Did he, finish out the Masters and say, I'm so emotionally drained that I'm just not even going to do a practice round until I'll play 9 holes Wednesday and then tee it up Thursday. We don't know what they're coming in with. There are a handful of guys, Chandler Phillips is one of them, that we know are approaching this week like it's their Masters. Like it's their everything that they've got to go out and perform as well as they possibly can. So just because the preparation and the motivation is there doesn't mean it's going to translate to success. So I certainly don't recommend like going all in on that type of thinking this week. Still going to follow the numbers for the most part, but I definitely don't hate that as a result. And I also think like he's somebody who's difficult to project because we don't yet have a great sample size on him. What we can say is, to your point, not long off the tee by any stretch of the imagination, certainly more accurate than he is long off the tee. And man, he has had some really, really impressive iron performances. So if he's driving the ball well, he's going to have a chance to do quite well this week.
Yeah, it was just one of those guys that kind of stood out. I always kind of scroll and see who. I mean, I thought Siwoo at 8,000 was too cheap, and then I thought that he was way too cheap down there at the bottom sixes. I expected him to be like a 67, 6,800 guy, not a 6,200 guy.
if there's one type of player that I think our model doesn't do a great job of, it's when there's somebody that we know historically has been good. Then they go through a stretch of pretty subpar play, and then they show us that they just might be back. I think in that situation, our model might be a little bit low on the guy. The guy who fits that mold this week is Keegan Bradley. Just had his best iron week in a long, long time. In fact, his best iron week of the entire season at Augusta. His putter finally came back after 2 disastrous weeks in a row at the Players and then the Valspar. I think I'm probably in on Keegan this week, knowing that he's going to be low owned, knowing that people I don't know that he's back, so I don't know that we're going to be ahead of the curve on him here, but I know that people are still out on him. I think there are enough signs that make me want to be all the way back in.
Yeah, Keegan, and then Justin Thomas and Spieth both missing the cut last week. Does that take away enough ownership to where, hey, we know they both have good short games. We know they both like to compete. Are they going to bounce back, and are we going to get them at low enough ownership to be like, hey, like maybe obviously not one and done, but maybe in the DFS market of can we get them low enough here to knowing their upside, how good their upside can be? Is it worth that gamble?
Yeah, I agree there. Last question. Keegan Bradley's available at 100 to 1 on FanDuel. Are you taking that?
I think I'd prefer it with an each way, to be honest, just because of the field that he's in. Yeah, it's got to be probably 80 to 1 with an each way.
It's 80 on Bet Rivers. Let me see.
Pretty good guess.
I'm not seeing his number on Bet365 right now, but yeah, 80 on Bet Rivers with the each way. 100 to 1 is available on FanDuel. I'm going to mull that one over. It's really close to me. I think I'm going to end up playing it. If the each way becomes available at 100, I'm playing it immediately. If the each way stays at 80, I think that I would prefer the pure outright at 100, knowing that like there's a little bit of a binary outcome here where either Keegan is back to being Keegan Bradley, in which case he's a screaming value, or last week was just kind of a shot in the pan. He stepped up for the major, but he's going to go back to struggling, that kind of thing. In which case it's not a great bet. And so for that reason, it's like I might just want the pure outright regardless, but
he kind of has that Siwoo backdoor top 10 in him though, that last round 62, like, and that's where the each way I think becomes valuable, is where he's tied for 20th, never really in contention, and goes and shoots 8, 9, 10 under the last round and finishes 4th out of nowhere, and he's never talked about the entire week.
Yeah, which is, by the way, exactly what he did at Augusta. Shot 3 under in the final round, and was phenomenal that way. He was 6 over after round 1, by the way. So hats off to Keegan for then shooting 1 under on the most difficult day just to get in, just to make the cut, and then finishing really, really strong to actually have a near top 20 finish at the Masters. So that was nice to see. I'm happy for him, even if he doesn't come through for us this week. But hopefully that's just the start of something really good this week, where we can ride our guy Keegan again to some really nice finishes and to some hopefully takedowns on DraftKings as well. We will continue, by the way, to hammer the Prize Picks and Underdog pick'em games. We went 10-3, so 78% win percentage over there at the Masters. Hopefully they add a little bit more. Maybe they won't pay quite as much attention this week as they did last week because it was the Masters. They were really, really quick to take some of our favorite plays off the board. So we'll get right back into those games this week. You can check us out in the Pick'em channel. By the way, we've started to go live with that Pick'em show every day, 12:15 Eastern time. We're talking NBA playoffs. We're talking MLB games. Now we're also going to talk some PGA as well. So we'll see you there on the FTN YouTube channel. You can subscribe right here. You're already here watching us. So subscribe to the FTN channel. Watch the show. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We will catch you next time.